Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting of Monday, November 7th, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin with the land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as distributed. Item 5 on your agenda, I'd like to go to Director Nora Marsh for the director's update.
Thank you. Earlier today, I wanted to inform trustees that the Government of Ontario has confirmed will rescind Bill 28, which had imposed a 4-year contract on the employees within our system represented by CUPE, examples of which include custodial and maintenance staff, office, clerical and technical staff, student transportation staff, educational assistants, and outdoor education staff, as well as continuing education staff. These employees generally are the lowest paid employees in the education sector with the lowest benefit packages. The promise to rescind Bill 28 occurred at a time when the labor movement was gearing up for what media were reporting was going to be a general strike action in sectors far broader than education, as there was significant concern at how the legislation was undermining the labor's right to collect bargaining. I know that I reflect many when I say that we're very pleased that the staff represented by CUPE will once again have the opportunity to negotiate the terms of their contract through regular collaborative bargaining processes, and that our schools will be open tomorrow for in-person learning. I also want to say that given the situation is evolving, concerns about the direction from the Ministry of Education to directors to offer synchronous learning in the absence of in-person learning are still relevant, given that we may find ourselves in this situation again. During the pandemic, we were able to move to synchronous learning for students because of the support and collaborative effort by all staff, and most especially CUPE members whose roles and responsibilities are linked directly to the capacity for synchronous learning. In the context of this past week and the potential of a longer shutdown, I felt it would be my responsibility to inform you that we would not be able to offer a similar synchronous learning experience as we did during the pandemic, and that it would not have been a viable solution for so many. For example, CUPE staff are responsible for deploying technology, for fixing technology, for supporting families and classroom staff when they are encountering technical difficulties, and support the whole infrastructure behind all of the platforms that we use to engage in synchronous learning. Moreover, CUPE staff are in our classrooms doing the important work of educational assistance, which assisted in engaging students with special education needs in a less than ideal circumstance of online learning. Finally, CUPE staff respond to parent concerns in our liaison between the school and the classroom. That role becomes even more important when we're not in person. The ministry's direction to directors to engage in synchronous learning gave the impression that in the absence of in-person learning, that classes were continuing. But the reality is that without CUPE staff, online learning is not a sustainable offering. While I don't believe I have the authority to not follow ministry direction in this regard, it is not a strategy that is workable for any duration, and in fact further alienates those families in most vulnerable situations. I therefore therefore felt it was important that you, the trustees, as well as the community, understand the operational implications given where we are in the process and where we may find ourselves again. For now, school is able to resume tomorrow, and we are hopeful that the strong reaction to the government's actions encourages it to fully engage in collective bargaining process. That concludes my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Marsh. I see that Trustee Forbes has a question. Go ahead, Darlene.
Thank you very much, Chair Thatcher. So thank you for the update, and I was indeed relieved to see that the government has rescinded the legislation. My question, and this may not be an easy one to answer, but in addition to the very valid points that you raised about keeping the technology going and facilitating all of that infrastructure that is essential to online learning, how do we instruct members of other unions to cross a virtual picket line? Essentially, they may not physically be going into a building, but they are carrying on I don't know, this feels like a new territory for me and my understanding, but I would really appreciate what you think of this.
Dr. Marsh.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So in the typical collective bargaining process, should a bargaining unit decide that it is going to strike because it's not feeling like it's getting traction at the collective bargaining table, it's not to say that other unionized members don't cross that picket line to take on duties within the building. So the direction in terms of virtual learning, I know that many felt it was like it was crossing a virtual picket line. In fact, during other times when there has been strike action, unionized members are able to cross a picket line, and normally there's some negotiation that occurs between those responsible for the picket and those who will be crossing it, with the understanding that they're not in a legal strike position, and therefore, in order to be paid, they have to resume their duties within the location, the work site. I'm not sure if there's more that Superintendent Mundy would wish to add. Right. Sorry, I don't have the picture up, but is she fine? Nothing to add. So that concludes the response to that question. Sorry, Trustee Forbes, for my confusion of not being able to see Superintendent Mundy.
No, I appreciate it, and I just heard certain people asking about that, so I'm including students who are conflicted. So hopefully we won't have to address it. So thank you very much.
Chair, if I may add, I will say, Trustee Forbes, in relation to the question, I think the thing that was slightly different about this occurrence was the legislation and the notwithstanding clause, that people felt that they were being pulled in a very different way because of the legislation, which did make this situation different than previous times.
Thank you, Director Marsh. Anything else, Trustee Forbes? Are there any further questions or comments? Is there anyone? Do you see anyone? No. Seeing none. Moving on to item 6, there are no recommended actions this evening. So then we'll move on to our first information item, and that is 7A, and we'll look to our student trustees, Ben Cameron, Lauren Edwards, and Gwen Colt for their report tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, we're delighted to present our student trustee report for October. First item on this report being the Student Senate Symposium that took place recently. So on October 17th, we held our Student Senate Symposium right here in this boardroom, and we got the opportunity to meet one another and discuss what the year ahead of us will look like, with 2 to 3 senators from each high school in Durham. We were fortunate to have our day start off with a presentation from Stephanie Pelgore, in which she spoke about well-being and its structural significance in schooling. Senators were very engaged in this presentation, we found, as we then sprung into conversation about many things, including assessing and reflecting and evaluating if their homeschool values and supports mental well-being by assigning a value out of 10. So from this general poll we took, we found that the average student would evaluate their school's well-being, support, and awareness as a 7 out of 10, which is very interesting information for us to further examine, as I'm sure it is for you as well. And throughout the morning, we also provided information on the election processes within our Senate, which will be taking place at our next meeting, and the function of board and student Senate for their understanding, as well as some icebreakers and games to kind of break things up. And then we wrapped up the day by leading a group discussion about student needs and how they play into the 3 working groups that guide Senate, which are student success, student voice, and equity, diversity, and inclusion, which every senator contributed to a lot, which was great. Overall, very insightful day, and we believe all of our senators took something away from it. Our next meeting will be November 21st, where we will be electing positions within the Senate to prepare for future initiatives.
Over the weekend of October 20th to 23rd, the Ontario Student Trustees Association, also known as OSTA-ACO, held this year's fall general meeting downtown. The 3 of us were fortunate enough to attend. During the conference, we heard from many wonderful key speakers who taught us about a variety of topics, including mental health, education governance with OPSPA, sexual education curriculum, and more. Education Minister Stephen Lecce also spoke and expressed his appreciation for OSTA. As well, we joined a bunch of different OSTA working groups, similar to those that we have in Senate, composed of student trustees from across the province. In these groups, we hope to address issues and concerns that are affecting students province-wide. We took a lot of information away from this conference, and all in all, it was very productive and insightful for us.
In terms of next steps for us to work on, we are mainly focusing on our election process for the positions within Senate, so we can begin taking action on the meaningful discussions we've been having with our senators. We've also begun looking into next year's student trustee elections as they're quickly approaching. We have started to brainstorm ways to make the entire process more equitable for everyone running and hope to share some of these ideas with the board soon. That concludes our report tonight, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or any comments for our student trustees? No. Seeing none. Thank you to Ben, Lauren, and Gwen. Gwen, before we go, I think I probably mispronounced your name, and I wonder if you could correct me on that.
That's totally okay. It happens all the time. It's pronounced Kiewit.
Kiewit.
The letter Q and then IT.
Okay, thank you very much.
No worries.
I'll remember for next time. All right, moving on in the agenda then to item 7B, calling on General Counsel Cotter for the electronic monitoring procedure.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. So the report can be found on pages 1 through 8 of the package. The purpose of the report is to provide trustees with information regarding the electronic monitoring procedure. The procedure is required under recent amendments made to the Employment Standards Act pursuant to the Working for Workers Act, also commonly referred to as Bill 88. The Administrative Council adopted the procedure at its meeting on October the 11th in compliance with the timelines in the legislation. The body of the procedure commences on page 4 of the package, and without summarizing the details in any great form, I can say that I think the key to the document is it doesn't create any new rights on the board to monitor employees. It's really about transparency. That's the gist of Bill 88, that employers with 25 employers or more have to disclose what monitoring is taking place in the workplace. And I think, you know, one of the key provisions, if I could just highlight one, would be section 4.2, which while the DDSB collects electronic information routinely, DDSB does not access and analyze this information routinely, but may authorize limited specific individuals to access this information only as appropriate. such as when investigating network misuse and employee misconduct, where reasonable cause arises, and shall be in accordance with legal requirements as to privacy and only as permitted by law and in accordance with DDSB policies and procedures. That statement sort of provides a nice, I think, summary of what the bill is, what Bill 88 is about, and what the procedure is about. It's not about creating new rights. It's about transparency for employees to understand what monitoring may be occurring in the workplace and when it might be accessed. But it's all supported by separate DDSB policies and procedures as to the underlying rights as to monitoring. So subject to any questions you may have, that is our report.
Thank you, Councillor Cotter. Yes, go ahead, Trustee Edwards. Go ahead, Donna.
I'm just wondering, is that when it comes to, I mean, this is all great as far as procedure, ensuring that there's transparency, but when it comes to employment contracts, et cetera, like that, do we actually make people aware of exactly what the policy or the procedure is as well?
Yes, there is a requirement that all new hires be made aware, and we will be rolling out that as part of the introductory package for all employees. They'll be provided with a copy of the procedure, and it will be publicly posted on our website as well. But a requirement of the legislation that we let all new employees know as well.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments or questions for Councillor Cotter? And seeing none, moving on to the OPSPA report. I just wanted to start by mentioning that Kathy Abram, President of OPSPA, started with just a brief statement this afternoon. We look forward to resuming negotiations with CUPE and the government, and hope that we can reach a fair and fully funded agreement as soon as possible without any further disruptions to students. Just a couple of other items that I'd like to mention. I have already mentioned the governance manual, which will be, the virtual copy will be available November 15th. And the hard copy will be provided to trustees at PES in January. There is quite a focus at the PES on training of the new trustees, as there seems to be quite a number of them. The orientation and responsibilities of trustees will be covered. The parliamentary procedure presentation by Lori Lacanuck, who we all know so well here. Just to mention again, the November 27th, 28th meeting on the Monday will be OPSPA representatives will be able to meet with MPPs and ask any questions that we're interested in, well, the monitored question. And that is the Advocacy Day at Queen's Park, Monday, November 28th. We will be meeting with the MPPs and having some conversation. So that is my report. Just to draw your attention then to the 3 items of correspondence. As there is no further business, I'd like to adjourn this meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special board meeting of Monday, November the 7th. And I welcome all. Good to see you. Calling this meeting to order. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and our schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, we learn, and we live. You have an agenda in front of you. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Looking at the agenda, I'm looking for a motion to approve that agenda. Moved by trustee Thatcher, seconded by, thank you, trustee Linda Lowry. All those in favor? Thank you. Moving on, we have a very special presentation this evening, and I'm going to ask Director Marsh to help me in that presentation. So shall we carry on? Thank you.
No, that was me.
Former trustee Brainy, could you come forward, please? We are welcoming not only Chris Brainy this evening, but his wife Sylvia is here with us and his mother. So welcome to your family, Chris. Good to see you. Chris has served our board so well, the Pickering community for, is it 4 terms, Chris? 16 years. He has been extremely active. He's been the chair, he's been the vice chair. He was the chair of finance for many, many years. And of course, all the committees that he has served on. Thank you, Chris. We are all very grateful for the service that you have provided. And I think we also need to say congratulations to Chris, because he and his family have moved out of our area of Durham. He now lives in the county, and he's assumed a new role. Congratulations, Chris.
I will just add to Chair Morton's comments. When I first arrived in Durham District School Board, Chris was the chair, and he and Nikki Lundquist, chair and vice chair, during a most tumultuous time in, I think, educational history, probably in terms of managing the pandemic. Chris led, I know, in terms of the connection to staff in such a way, his compassion, his sense of ethics, his integrity, and his deep care, not only for students in our district, but also for staff well-being. He was someone who I turned to consistently in terms of needing that support that he provided me, and you will forever have actually a very sincere place in my heart for all that you did for my leadership during that time. I really appreciate it, and I know that many throughout the district appreciate your leadership and all that you've done for this board over many years. Chris, we wish you the very best in your next endeavor, and Edward County is lucky to have you.
To the new counselor of Prince Edward County, would you like to speak, Chris? I'll simply give you.
I hadn't planned to, but I find it's what I'd really like to say is it's been a real, I've been always been very proud and privileged to represent Pickering, but I will cherish the memories that over 4 terms with so many great tangible things that we're so fortunate and lucky as trustees to see students and their achievements. More specifically, I'd like to say to all of you, trustees and superintendents, you should all be extremely proud of what you've all done in the last 4 years. During COVID, some of the challenges that we've had, the one thing I can say that I know and we all know together is that we've all moved the needle in the right direction. And to me, that's all we can ask for, and we've done a great job. I love this board. Nora, your leadership has been absolutely stellar. Carolyn, thank you, and all my colleagues. It's been such a pleasure serving with you, and I will miss all of you. Thank you.
Could we call upon Trustee Edwards to come forward, please? Donna. We thank Donna. We recognize Donna. She was elected in 2010, so she has served the community of Ajax for 3 consecutive terms. Amazing work. Donna has been completely engaged, always offering leadership at OPSPA, always engaged with, she was chair of finance, she was vice chair of the board. She's always been so involved in SEAC, recognizing the needs of our students. Thank you, Donna, for all that you have done for our board. We are grateful.
Trustee Edwards, on behalf of the senior staff, we're very happy to acknowledge your service in terms of the previous 4 years, but also look forward to the continued work in this next term in particular. And in particular, want to thank you for your avid support in terms of, as Chair Morton mentioned, SEAC, but Ed Finance and Audit as well. Really appreciate all of your leadership on a variety of committees. So on behalf of us, yes, token of our appreciation.
Trustee Linda Lowry, you can go. Trustee Lowry served with us as trustee in 2017, 2018. And when we were in need of trustees earlier this year, Linda came forward. We are so thankful that she put her name forward and has done amazing work. Our last few months, we've made some major decisions. We've worked really hard, and I am so pleased that you have been part of the team. Thank you, Linda, for joining us.
And on behalf of us, here is a token of appreciation for your service. Very much appreciate you stepping forward at time and need, and appreciated your presence on the board. Thank you, Linda.
And Trustee Thatcher, could you come forward, please? Trustee Thatcher just completed her first term with us, representing the Whitby community. She is being reelected and will serve another 4 years. She has served in many capacities. So she's been the vice chair of the board. She's been offering leadership at OPSPA, the director of performance review, and I could go on with many, many committees. We are definitely very grateful for the work that you have done on behalf of the board. Thank you kindly, Trustee.
And Trustee Thatcher, on behalf of us, a token of appreciation for the last 4 years. We look forward to swearing you in at the next board meeting for the next term, and with appreciation for all of your service. Thank you. Correct, but should I do you first and then we can sit down?
Trustee Kate Bird is with us tonight virtually. Kate, I would love for you to be here. I would love to be shaking your hand because you are another person who came forward a few months ago when we needed your voice. You have been here to help us make important decisions, and you and your voice are greatly valued by our board. Thank you, Kate.
Kate, on behalf of us, we do have a token of appreciation for your service. We have so appreciated you, no connection to Durham District School Board previously, and you stepped up because you are such an active member of this community. And we have very much appreciated your voice at this table in terms of helping senior team do the work that we do. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Trustee Darlene Forbes, and we can see you, Darlene. I also wish that you were here and I would shake your hand. Darlene has completed her first term as a trustee representing the Oshawa community. She has been amazing. I remember her first year, she was elected as the vice chair of standing, and she played that role extremely well. Since then, she's played finance chair and also served on so many committees. Thank you, Darlene, for, even though you've been a student, you've been working hard, you've definitely played a huge role serving our community. Thank you, Darlene.
And Darlene, on behalf of us, we do have a token of appreciation for your service and for your compassionate service. You have often been the voice of those most vulnerable in our community around that board table, and we very much appreciate the courage you've shown in speaking up so often. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a great honor. Thank you.
I'll hand the mic over to you, Darlene, if you'd like.
Oh, well, sorry, I didn't mean to be emotional. It's just been a great honor to serve the people of Oshawa and to work on things like the human rights policy and the Indigenous education policies, and just to stand with you all, and you know, we've had a lot of rough times with the pandemic, and you know, it's been a great challenge, but a great privilege, and I just want to thank everyone around the table who've helped me grow into this role, and I wish everyone great success going forward.
Thank you, Darlene. Another trustee who is virtually with us tonight is Trustee Templeton. Scott, thank you. Scott has just completed his 4-year term representing the community of Whitby. Scott is another one who has served on so many committees. He's been on the PIC committee. He's serving with me on the SAL committee. He's on the audit committee. He's been very active representing not only the community of Whitby, but all of the Durham District School Board. Thank you, Scott. And presently, he's also Vice Chair of Standing.
So Scott, on behalf of us, we're very happy to be giving you this token of appreciation for the 4 years that you have served as a member of the Durham District School Board. Very much appreciate all that you've done and where you've stepped in when we've needed you most. And we wish you so much of our best wishes in terms of whatever's next for you in terms of your endeavors. Thank you again.
Scott, would you like the mic?
I would, but I'm getting emotional.
Thank you, Scott. We'll move on to some trustees who are not with us tonight. Nikki is online. Good. Welcome, Nikki. Nikki has also just completed her first term, her 4-year term, representing the community of Whitby. Nikki has been very active, offering strong leadership in so many areas. She was vice chair of the board, and we are thankful for the service that she has provided to the Durham District School Board. Thank you, Nikki.
So Nikki, on behalf of us, we're very happy to be giving you a gift of appreciation for your 4 years of service. And again, similar to what I said about Chair Brainy when I first came in, you were the vice chair, and want to express personal appreciation as well for your support and your leadership during a very challenging time in the board's history and in the province's history. I also want to say that very often you challenged the senior team in our thinking in a way that was so positive in terms of helping us think more broadly, and want to thank you for that service. And we wish you all of our best in terms of your next endeavor for council in Whitby.
Yes, there is another individual that we can congratulate. Because she's moving in new pathway. Congratulations, Nikki, and thank you. Would you like the mic? Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to Trustee Michael Barrett. Trustee Michael Barrett has served our community for approximately 20 years. He has served in the role of chair for many years, vice chair of the board. He has served as chair of governance, but the leadership that he has offered to Ontario Public School Boards is exceptional. Michael has always been a voice of leadership, a voice of reason, and we are very thankful that Michael has been part of this board for approximately 20 years. Thank you, Michael.
So I think perhaps we'll do Trustee Crawford as well, and then I can close if that works for you. Thank you.
And Trustee Paul Crawford has been with the Durham District School Board for many, many terms. We certainly appreciate how he has served Pickering, and the entire Durham District School Board. Paul has been busy on the audit committee, serving on many other committees, so we are thankful for Paul's service as well.
Thank you. So other than Chair Morton, I believe that does conclude all of the trustees who served this term right now with us. Of course, Michael Barrett and Paul Crawford aren't here. Otherwise, we would be giving them the same opportunity in terms of an opportunity to speak. So that leaves Chair Morton. And on behalf of all of us here, want to thank you for your dedicated service. I don't know, Carolyn has the capacity to know everything about everybody, and I don't know how she keeps it all straight, but she does. So this evening, in terms of what she was able to say about her colleagues, that would be information that she would just know because she has an inventory of what people have accomplished and always wants to look at the positive and find a path forward that is one that is of care and compassion. When I first arrived in Durham District School Board, Trustee Morton made her way over to me. I was sitting there and she said, "You are going to be one very busy individual, and I don't think you know how busy you're going to be." I don't think any of us knew how busy we would all be in terms of what the future held for us. So thank you so much, Chair Morton, for your care of the Durham District School Board, for all of your dedicated service, and for your opportunities to help other people shine. Thank you.
Thank you for those very kind words, Nora. And we have had a fairly busy 3 years, haven't we? But I have completely loved the 3 terms that I have been with the Durham District School Board. I have loved all the committees that I've worked on. And I thank you for your dedication and your care as well. When I was in the classroom, I always had a big sign up on the wall and it said TEAM, team, the importance of team. Together, everybody achieves more. I have always believed in that, and I still firmly believe that we are a strong team together, working together. Thank you.
Thank you. And here is a token of appreciation on our behalf in terms of the work that you have done, and we look forward to swearing you in at the next special board meeting. And perhaps I'll read the inscription on it. So it says, presented to, with the trustee's name, in this instance, Carolyn Morton, with deep appreciation, sorry, you're moving on me and I can't read it, with deep appreciation for your dedicated service to the DDSB and its students, 2022. Congratulations to each of you in terms of your public service, most appreciated. And we look forward to what you're all going to do next in whichever role you may find yourself in, community member, community leader, community politician. Thank you. Well, so I think that, you know, education is about growth, and it's about the belief of nurturing, and that as you nurture, things are able to grow. And so it seemed appropriate that we chose a tree to recognize the trustees and their service for this term, because it is that idea of nurturing and growing and giving life to. And in so many respects, the work that we do is about giving people opportunities and possibilities. And so that plant-based symbol, we thought, worked really well in terms of education. And it wasn't an apple, which we have used a lot in education. So we thought it's something a little bit different, something artistic, also understanding and recognizing the importance of arts in education. And we hope that each of you appreciates this within your homes or your offices as a memory of the good work that you have done. Thank you.
Moving on to recommended actions, and we do have 3. The first one is the Director Performance Review, and I'm going to go to Vice Chair Thatcher for that.
Thank you. And through you, Chair Morton. The Director of Education's performance review follows a robust, transparent appraisal process, which is outlined in our Director Performance Review Policy. According to Section 1.0 of the Durham District School Board's Director of Education Performance Review Policy, one of the key responsibilities of the Board of Trustees is to monitor and evaluate the performance of the Director of Education in meeting the obligations of the position under the Education Act, the Board's policies and procedures, and the Board's multi-year strategic plan. In accordance with Section 4.1.4 of the DPR policy, I would bring this to the Board. I would like to move that A, the Director of Education Performance Review has been completed. B, that the Director of Education position profile and objectives has been approved for the upcoming year and will be posted publicly on the Board website. And C, that the most current version of the Director's employment contract is posted publicly on the Board website.
Thank you, Trustee Thatcher. Are there questions? Are there comments about that report?
Chair Morton, that was a motion. I think that in addition to it being a report, just for clarification.
Thank you. Trustee Thatcher has put forward the motion. I'm looking for somebody to second that motion. Thank you, Trustee Templeton. Further conversation about that motion? Seeing no questions, seeing no comments, then I will call for the vote. Again, I will repeat the motion. A, the Director of Education Performance Review has been completed. B, that the Director of Education position profile and objectives have been approved for the upcoming year and will be posted publicly on the Board website. And C, that the most current version of the Director's employment contract is posted publicly on the Board website. This motion has been put forward by Trustee Thatcher, seconded by Trustee Templeton. I would ask those in person to vote with their cards. Those who are on Zoom to vote with the green check mark or the red X. And that motion has passed. Thank you. Moving on to the second recommended action. This is the draft Consolidated School Community Council, the FCC, and Parent Involvement Committee, the PIC policy. And I'm going to go to Trustee Scott Templeton for that. Scott?
Thank you, Chair Morton. The purpose of this report is to seek approval from the Board of Trustees of the draft Consolidated School Community Council and Parent Involvement Committee PIC policy that came before the board as a notice of motion on October 17th. We're looking at a recommended action. The report can be found, by the way, on pages 1 to 94. And we are looking for, it is recommended that the Board of Trustees consider and, as it may deem appropriate, approve the draft Consolidated School Community Council and Parent Involvement Committee policy. We're looking for someone to move that motion.
So you are moving that motion, Trustee Templeton?
Yeah. I will move that motion.
You will move that motion. I will repeat it. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees consider and, as it may deem appropriate, approve the draft Consolidated School Community Council and Parent Involvement Committee policy. Could we have somebody second that motion? Sorry. Oh, thank you. Darlene Forbes has seconded that motion. Open for questions and comments. Thank you. Donna Edwards.
Thank you. And I recognize that this consolidation of the threat is to follow sort of the Education Act and the regulations that follow under it. And I agree with what has been put here in the most part. I'm just a little concerned around in doing some investigation on the next also item on the agenda as well, is around parent and community input around some of the job duties, specifically around principals and supervisory officers. And one of the items that is in there is required around getting characteristics of principals, but there's nothing around supervised officers. And I'm particularly referring to the Education Act, 11 and 11.1 that addresses that. And I just feel that that community input and around supervised officers and principals is still not quite addressed in the report. And I also think that it's something that the new director might want to look at as far as how they want to incorporate some of that community input through the strategic planning process, et cetera. So I would really like to defer this for the new board and the new director of education. So I'm actually asking for a motion to defer until February or March of 2023.
Trustee Edwards has put forward a motion to defer this motion until the new year. Could I have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Thatcher, thank you. Speaking to the second motion, Director Marsh.
We have 72 regulations on the books, and we have 2 binders that are probably about 8 inches thick in terms of revisions that are required. I think we have made our way through approximately 12 in 2 years' time. So I would ask, given that I appreciate the concern you have around the consultation, but I would suggest that in terms of the new director coming in, the more of these that we have tidied up, this was in governance, there wasn't feedback on it in governance. And so I would ask whether or not individuals would be willing to support the elimination of the regulation, having the policy come into place, and then once it's under regular review, or if it comes up as a concern, this hasn't lost anything in terms of that community consultation. It's not like anything was taken out of what's on the books. So this is an improvement in terms of what is on the books. It doesn't take any of that away. And so then there's still an opportunity to improve it later, but it's not limiting consultation by making it less than what is currently. In fact, it's a better procedure, policy and procedure than what is currently in place. So I think it would stand in good governance in terms of having it in place. And given that there are 72 regulations, I would suggest that once something comes from governance, unless it's of grave concern and it's an elimination of content that's in there, that it is actually in the best interest, speaking from the director's perspective, to get moving on the regulations and getting them replaced as quickly as possible. Tonight, we're bringing forward 2 that did go through governance with the intent of trying to support support the new board and the new director and having a few less to have to address so that they can move on with the other 60 that are still waiting review.
Thank you, Director Marsh. Trustee Edwards, did you want to comment?
Recognizing that, as you said, that it doesn't change anything, but recognizing that it is something that I feel strongly around the public consultation part on some of the things that it's something that I would say the new board would have to look at and that it would go back. Also, just a note that although it did go to governments, we had the minimum amount of required attendance there. And I would say that, I don't think it went as rigorous as what it basically would normally do with a full attendance of all the trustees. So I have no problem then to keeping this going forward with this particular one, but I might not, I have even more concerns on the next one, just saying.
Chair?
Sure.
The only other thing I'll say, which may make you feel a bit better about the community consultation part, is the regulation on community consultation. There is a separate regulation on that one. It has not yet come forward for revision. So certainly in terms of governance, that might be something that the new board can take on early along with the strategic planning so that the community consultation regulation is a focus in support of these other procedures and policies.
Thank you. I think Trustee Forbes had her hand up. Darlene, is your hand still up?
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair. It was just simply a point of clarification. We did have a motion on the floor and then a second motion was added. So I was just a little confused. So if I'm understanding, it sounds like Trustee Edwards is going to withdraw the motion. Is that correct? And we're just going to deal with the original motion for now? Or?
Trustee Edwards?
No, the motion's on the floor and it's been seconded, so you actually have to defeat it. And I have, as said, I have no problem it being defeated on this particular policy. Thank
you for the clarification.
The motion has been put forward by Trustee Edwards, seconded by Trustee Thatcher to defer this motion.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. No, I'm confused. I thought Trustee Templeton had a motion on the floor. I'm very confused now.
So General Counsel Cotter, do you mind just moving through? I believe there was a motion that was seconded by originally by Trustee Templeton.
Yeah, so that motion was on the floor and it was seconded. So I think that motion, the vote should take place on that motion. And in light of Trustee Edwards' position that she's articulated, I think it would make sense just to vote on that primary motion. The motion to adopt the policy. Unless I've misunderstood Trustee Edwards' position, I understood that she was content for the policy to be passed tonight.
Thank you for that clarification. The original motion was this. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees consider and as it may deem appropriate, approve the draft Consolidated School Community Council and Parent Involvement Committee policy. That motion has been put forward. It has been seconded. We've had conversation. I am now asking that everyone exercise their vote, one way or the other. That motion has also passed. Thank you. Moving on to the third recommended action, and that is the draft revised supervisory officer recruitment policy. And again, we will go to Trustee Scott Templeton to speak to that motion. Scott?
Thank you, Chair Morton. The purpose of this report is to provide the Board of Trustees with the draft policy regarding supervisory officer recruitment to replace the existing hiring superintendent policy and hiring of the superintendent regulation. The draft policy was approved by the Governance and Policy Committee and came to the board as a notice of motion at the prior board meeting. And it is recommended that the board consider and, as it may deem appropriate, adopt the supervisory officer recruitment policy at Appendix A, which is in, sorry, I'm looking, 95 to 102, to replace the hiring of superintendents policy and hiring of superintendents regulation. And I will put forward that motion.
Thank you, trustee Templeton. I'm looking for somebody to second that motion. Sorry. Thank you, Darlene, for seconding that motion. We will now open for discussion, questions, or comments. Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I do have some concerns around the timing of this item, given the fact that we have a brand new Board of Trustees who are scheduled to take the reins in about a week. It's the 7th of November. They'll be on board the 15th. It's about a week from now. We also have a new director, and I believe out of respect for both, they should be involved and should be consulted on this particular policy. I think I would like to see a little bit more research. I'd like to understand a little more about what might be happening in other boards and what the rationale is for that. I mean, the Ed Act requires boards to develop and maintain policies to promote the board's goals, for sure. And it's then the responsibility of the board to monitor and evaluate these policies. But I don't believe that I have enough information here to be able to feel positive about this at this particular time. At the moment, we're sitting with 8 of 11 trustees on our board. 2 have been with us, no offense, but for a matter of weeks, and 2 more will be moving on after the 14th of November. So my concern around this then is specifically the timing. And I think that we really need to get a little bit more background information, do a little bit more research about this, and get input from 11 trustees who this will be affecting going forward. So I know we have a motion on the floor here and it's been seconded. My concern is not really to say we don't need to talk about this, because I think we do, but I feel that we need to defer the conversation. So I would not be in favor of this going forward.
Thank you, trustee Thatcher. We will now go to Director Marsh.
I think trustee Forbes did have her hand up. I'm not sure if that was for new comment before me.
We will go to trustee Darlene Forbes.
Sorry, I was double clicking my mute. Sorry, this did come to governance, and I do recall it being in front of the governance committee and being recommended for approval. And I understand that we have had diminished, numbers of trustees. But the fact remains, I am quite concerned that past practice of this board has not always, I won't even go there, I'll strike that. I've been concerned that perhaps, if this policy was in place, was it based in the Education Act as proper practice and law? I'm not a legal expert, so I would really like to understand what we did before. And I know this has been explained, so the Reader's Digest version would be great. And what this new revised policy seeks to do in terms of alignment with roles and responsibilities.
Chair Thatcher, I'm happy to jump in to answer that question, or sorry, Chair Morton. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Trustee Forbes. So the current policy and regulation calls for trustees to sit on the hiring panel of the supervisory officers. And as we've seen in the review of the Peel District School Board, the reviewers issued a directive number 2, that the members of the board shall immediately cease to participate on hiring, promotion, and appointment panels, except for the position of Director of Education. That the board shall establish a policy restricting members of the board from participating on hiring, promotion, appointment panels for all positions other than the Director of Education. And the Peel District School Board adopted a policy consistent with that directive. I can also advise that I've touched base with the General Counsel at the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. They as well in the summer adopted a policy removing trustees from the hiring panel for supervisory officers, as has the York Region District School Board. So school boards are in reviewing the Peel District School Board review, are aligning their policies with the common practice and compliance with the Education Act as articulated by the reviewers on the review of the Peel District School Board. I think that's in terms of the legal perspective. The Education Act outlines a policy governance model, which clearly articulates that the board has the CEO and the CEO has everybody else. That's the common sort of policy governance framework. And it's articulated by the Peel reviewers, but by other commentators as well, that the critical aspect of that is not only just on a good governance foundation, but for accountability of the director. We've seen the director's performance review come forward, and proper accountability means that the director has to have that responsibility for the senior team. If superintendents are involved in hiring, then it blurs the lines when it comes to performance of the senior team in terms of holding the director accountable. And I think it's a gap that can't be filled by rigorous oversight. Rigorous oversight becomes militated, really. If there is a blurring of the lines in terms of who is responsible for the team being in place in the first instance. Also, under the Education Act and the regulations, the Board of Trustees does sit as an appellant body. Essentially, supervisory officers are entitled to a hearing if they're to be dismissed from their employment, and the board would be involved in that hearing. If the board is involved in the hiring, I think it again would blur the lines in terms of the board's role in acting as a second voice as to whether the termination of a supervisory officer is appropriate. So those are two additional points I would make, other than the point that's made in the report and in the Peel review, which is that it creates an inappropriate relationship between senior staff and the Board of Trustees in terms of currying favor. You have backroom discussions that, I was on your hiring panel, I was able to push you through, and you have sort of some inappropriate loyalty that can develop over time when those staff are reporting to the CEO and not to the Board of Trustees as individuals. So those are some general comments on sort of the policy governance framework and the stipulations in the Education Act, that the board has a CEO and the CEO has therefore has everyone else.
Thank you, Council Cotter. We will go to Director Marsh.
Thank you. Just to build on Council Cotter's comments, I understand that we are in a situation where there's a new director of education starting within a few months and a new board of trustees. And I think it's for that very reason that it is so important that this regulation, which is not compliant with the Education Act, which does have trustees inappropriately sometimes chairing hiring committees for superintendents. The practice on those hiring committees varies depending on which trustees sit on them. And I think it's for those very reasons that we actually get this regulation compliant get a policy in place that is appropriate with the Education Act so that we're setting up the new board as well as the new Director of Education for success in terms of that sound governance relationship. And I feel that it is a responsibility to take care of this prior to the new Director of Education and new board beginning. And that was one of the reasons why, with the timing in discussion with governance, that this one did come forward under a timeline to get passed prior to the new board.
Just one more comment. I want to thank Director Marsh and Council Cotter for their confirming my understanding of why this change is necessary. And I mean, policies and governance, they are living beings, but they do need to be compliant with, the legislation. So therefore, I would be in favor of supporting this motion when it comes time to vote. Thank you.
Trustee Edwards wants to speak after we do that.
We will go to Trustee Edwards.
Isn't there a speakers list though with people who haven't spoken on the motion?
I'm keeping track of that, yes?
Haven't spoken on it. And I understand and I fully agree when it comes to the compliance under the Education Act, is that it does say in the Education Act that we have one employee, and that is the Director of Education. And to make a comment that we chaired hiring committees, we never chaired a hiring committee. It was always the Director of Education that chaired the hiring committee. And then it was also under the understanding that even though we sat on hiring committees and we provided input, because the superintendent is the connection between trustees and the community as far as that's concerned, as designated by the Director of Education. Our decisions, even though we sat on the panel, our decisions were always based on is that even though we had input, the Director of Education was responsible and solely responsible for hiring the Superintendent of Education. And I can remember sitting on a particular one and saying, the decision is ultimately the Director of Education, so we fully understand that. So my concern is that, again, under the Education Act, under section 287.4, that's what talks about performance appraisals, but also it talks about responsibilities. In that, again, how is the consultation going to happen for that community, especially when we're looking at relationships being built between the community and the superintendent of supervisory officer, basically, and trustees as well. I think that relationship is really key, and how that is developed is important. And so I honestly think that that is a learning experience for the next board to going through this, understanding what the role is and understanding, yes, we don't have a hiring, but I really have a problem with the fact that it has none of the sections around the supervisor and appraisal and getting public input, particularly about parents and so forth, is included in that as well, and that whole process. So I really would like, because it is a building relationships with the next director, to have this deferred again, but fully understand that I understand that we have one employee in the board. But I think it's very a good opportunity to work with the new Board of Trustees. I also like to note that there are other boards that still, even though we talk about compliance, including the Toronto District School Board, that has do have trustees on their hiring panels. And I do understand that, again, they don't have votes, if you wish, on the hiring panels, even though they're involved. So that's more of, from my perspective, because it's that communication link that's really, really important. So I'm not really supporting this to move ahead. I think it needs to be looked at, the new director and the new trustees.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. I see that Trustee Lundquist has not had an opportunity to speak. Her hand is up. So Nikki, I will go to you next.
Thank you, Chair Morton. Can you hear me? I've been having trouble with sound for the evening, so I'm not sure if you can or not.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll be brief. So I have had very strong feelings about what is essentially a lame duck board making decisions. And I've always had that issue because I think big decisions should be left to incoming boards. This is different though, in my view. And it's different because we've talked about it at great length over the course of governance meetings. We have reports that indicate that it's an inappropriate practice. To me, in order to comply with the legislation, I understand as well as anybody that you can always find paths through it. But ultimately, the question becomes, is this of value to the school board in terms of functionality? And I don't think that it is. I don't think having trustees on those panels actually improves the process in any way. It is not the board's responsibility to ensure trustees get to, have a training ground for these sorts of things. Ultimately, we have a singular employee. We are tasked with ensuring that employee manages the strategic planning of the board, etc. It's a fulsome role. There will be all kinds of opportunities for trustees to develop strengths as they progress through their term. I know I certainly did, and I know that everybody else on the board did as well. Practically speaking, though, I think that ultimately it comes down to a question of this. What is the value in having a trustee there? And so if it's a question of community voice, there are ways to consult in terms of community voice. It doesn't need to be through a trustee. And I'm not sure that it's appropriate that it is through a trustee, because often trustees are their own voice, not the voice of the community. Sometimes they are. But ultimately, when you look at this, the rationale behind it was essentially to comply with the legislation, first of all, and second of all, to ensure that the practice is consistent and coherent throughout. That will change every time there is a change in the Board of Trustees. And so I feel pretty strongly that it is actually in service to the incoming trustees to pass this policy in its current form. And I'm prepared to vote in favor of it on that basis. Truly, and it's not because I think that new trustees or the incumbents that are returning can't manage it. I honestly believe a significant amount of work has been put into it. The rationale for it is strong and supportable, and I'm going to vote to support it on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. The speakers list looks like this: Trustee Thatcher, Trustee Forbes, and then we will come back to Trustee Templeton, as he was the person who brought. Oh, Trustee Byrd has her hand up. I did not see that. Kate, your hand is up. We will go to you next, Trustee Byrd.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to echo a lot of what Nikki just said, and I'm trying to, I guess, wrap my head around, based on all the things that Councillor Cotter just talked about in terms of it muddying the waters for a trustee to be on the committee, and Trustee Edwards sort of confirming that the trustees actually have no say in who gets hired anyway. I guess I'm failing to see why anyone would even be on that committee to begin with, because it feels like it's doing more harm than good. So, but I think Nikki said a lot of what I wanted to say more eloquently than I am. So, but I would vote to support this as well.
Thank you, Trustee Byrd. Moving on to Trustee Thatcher.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm listening carefully to all the comments. I think that's important for us to do. It's interesting that we have differences of opinions, some different information coming forward. I know that there are boards who, as Councillor Cotter said, the Ottawa Carleton board perhaps is one that doesn't involve trustees, but there are a number of boards, and the Toronto District School Board, and I believe there's a board up north. I spoke with someone there, and they do have trustees involved with the hiring of their SOs. I'm not saying that we that this is something that is necessarily wrong, but I just feel that we need to involve more people who will be very much affected by this going forward in the next 4 years. And I do agree with Donna, Trustee Edwards, in terms of consultation. That's important to me. Our public consultation is 4 to 6 weeks. We sometimes go to develop a committee to bring forward information to the board so that we can take a look at the facts and then make an informed decision. I don't feel this has happened here because, well, for a number of reasons, but there were 5 trustees on that at that governance meeting. And at this point in time, there are 3 here who this would affect going forward. I think that there is an opportunity here. Something that came up in our governance manual, it's important to note that the director and senior staff often work closely with trustees as a plan is developed. I don't think that's happened here. This creates a sense of joint leadership that can lead to better outcomes. A great opportunity, I think, for bonding of our new board and senior staff and director. I really would just like to suggest that we get a little bit more information so that we can make a more informed decision around this item. I'm not saying that we scrap it completely. I'm just suggesting that it's something that needs to be discussed with a new board that will be be sworn in about 7 or 8 days, and a new director who might have a different perspective. That's all I'm suggesting.
Thank you, Trustee Thatcher. Going now to Darlene Forbes. Darlene, your hand is up.
So just briefly, I have mentioned in our previous meetings that I think it's really important that the Board of Trustees develop a reflexive practice and look at how they operate. And, you know, this current one, we didn't really get a chance to do that because we had so many huge hurdles and challenges along the way. As I hear about sitting on hiring committees to develop relationships, I have a huge problem with that because that is not an equal power sharing agreement. That is a Board of Trustee, a member of the Board of Trustees sitting on someone's hiring committee. That is, I have a problem with that as a perception of power. It may never have been used in that way, but I think we need to be really cautious. And the board moving forward, I really encourage you to look at power and privilege that is inherent in this role and how it is used and how it has perhaps, you know, been either misused or misconstrued or misinterpreted in the past. And I think being crystal clear in our policies that are firmly aligned with legislation is important. It is part of what I see as my fiduciary duty as a trustee for my remaining term, and I was in the governance committee meetings where this was discussed. So I would just really caution, and not caution, but just encourage, let's start having these discussions as a board. I would hope that that would happen moving forward. And I would encourage us all as we move forward in our journeys to really look at the power and privilege we hold and how it could potentially impact those we serve and work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on now to Trustee Lundquist. Your hand is up again.
It was Chair Morton, but in fact, Darlene actually said most of what I would have said. But I would also observe that no policy is written in stone and every policy can be revisited. So if the incoming board decides that they would like to reverse course on this, that's entirely up to them. The challenge to me is this. It is very easy for trustees to overstep in their roles, particularly when they're new. I read the platforms of most trustees and most didn't understand the scope of the role as defined by the legislation. I don't think it's a good idea to have ambiguity. And I think that putting this off actually creates unnecessary ambiguity. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving back to Scott Templeton, you brought forward the motion. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one more speaker, Donna Edwards. Donna?
And again, I agree that, you know, when it comes to looking at the power and the privilege and stuff, and I didn't say establishing relationships on the committee, but it was an ability to basically see and understand and look at as far as what we see as our community. And that's the thing is that under the Education Act, it actually talks about getting community input into the appraisals of a special of FSOs, as well as getting input even into characteristics of a new what they see we would do for principals for a school. We ask for the SECs and the community to say, what are the characteristics of the principal? There's nothing in this policy that actually addresses those sections of the Education Act that actually says that we need to get community input and even the characteristics of it. There's nothing in there. And so that's my concern. And my concern about not leaving this is that once a policy is, we have a 4-year cycle, and I understand the ability to open something up. But the thing is that as Director Marsh said, is we have a lot of policies going through, and if it isn't seen as an urgent, and I just feel that that whole community consultation process for those positions have not been addressed in here that is required under the Education Act.
Thank you, Donna. And now we will go back to Director Marsh.
Thank you. And I appreciate again the comments in terms of consultation, but I would note that the current regulation doesn't contain any of those things that might be good. So again, I would suggest that passing this new policy is a better foundation for the new board moving forward, especially when one considers the direction that other boards, when this has come, and I quote from our report, that the ministry has informed another board that they shall establish a policy restricting members of the board from participating on hiring, promotion, and appointment panels for positions other than the Director of Education. I know that depending on which trustees serve on the hiring panels, it really varies. And it varies based on those trustees and the way the trustees view their positions. And so that's confusing as well. So in some instances, the chair has asked, the trustee has assumed the role of chair. I'm not talking about the chair of the board, but chairing that committee, and is seen as the incoming candidates as the person actually conducting those interviews. So it is very confusing based on the inconsistency. The other thing I would suggest is that within the current regulation, we don't mention and is not actually compatible with the equitable hiring framework, which this board has adopted. And so there is a problem there that the equitable hiring framework is not included in the current regulation. So the new policy, while it may, there may be a wish to have more information brought in terms of consultations, I would again suggest that that's not in the current regulation, and therefore creating a policy that is actually compliant with the legislation, compliant with direction to other boards from the Ministry of Education, and makes explicit use of the equitable hiring framework given our human rights policy, is a better place for the new board and the new Director of Education to begin the work.
Thank you. Trustee Templeton, are you there?
I am. A lot of the subject has been covered by what I was really thinking along the lines, especially with the regulations in place. But as trustees, we hire a CEO to the director to control the school board and put our trust into that director. At no time, even if they're hiring a superintendent, we're not on there, we're still going to be having a relationship with that superintendent. So as trustees, we build a relationship with all the superintendents and the director of education. And this is an opportunity in time with a new director coming in to show not only the trust that we're installing in her, the new director, but it allows us as trustees to build a good relationship with her and our superintendents at that time. So, I mean, I can't echo it any more gracefully than Director Marsh did, and Nikki said, and Darlene said. But I believe at this point, this is a policy that has to be in place. It's the right direction at the right time, because you are starting new with a new board of trustees, a new director. It's the perfect opportunity to start anew and building properly and staying in with regulations. So I am going to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Templeton. I will repeat the motion and then I will call for the vote. The motion is as follows. It is recommended that the board consider, and as it may deem appropriate, adopt the supervisory officer recruitment policy at Appendix A to replace the hiring of superintendent's policy and hiring of superintendent's regulation. That is the motion. I would call the vote now.
Double check.
Chair Morton, can you see my yes vote? I can't tell from my screen. I'm terribly sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's
I
four
can see
check
your
marks
yes vote.
online, and we have 4 X's in the boardroom. Chair Morton,
I'm
we have 4 check marks online and 4 X's in the boardroom.
That motion has failed. Thank you.
Chair? I
Certainly.
feel obligated in my role as Director of Education and providing advice to this board that they have just failed a policy that is not compliant with the Education Act, and that they have a policy that is working outside of the trustees' roles, and that I'm very concerned about the failure of this policy to pass this evening. I think it is a disservice.
Thank you. Trustee Edwards?
And I recognize that. I don't think anybody around here has said that the policy doesn't need to be reworked, and that we agree with what some of the things. It's just that we really wanted it to be deferred to the next board meeting, that the next board of trustees, because it does need to be worked on at that point in time.
G. Lundquist?
You know what? I don't actually need to speak to it. It's the decision is made, and I'm sure the board will be responsible for the decision that it's going to have to live with. So that's fine.
And Trustee Thatcher?
It is the decision of the board. Just supporting what Trustee Edwards has said. I don't think that anyone here is, we're just looking for more information. I think it's obvious when we were listening to input from the director and other trustees that there's a lot more information here that wasn't in the report for us to consider. And I think that's what it's all about. None of us here want to have any policy that is in contravention of the Education Act. But I think we just need to take a little bit more of a deeper look into this one. I think that's what it is, Director Marsh. I don't think it's certainly not the plan.
Thank you. Although that
And it's not
information that we
personal either.
provided verbally was in the report.
No further conversation. I'm looking at the agenda. And if there is no other business, I would consider this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.